we start a new book study in our Explore the Bible series through Lifeway. We're in First Thessalonians, and there's a really cool video that I posted on Facebook that kind of explains the overview of First Thessalonians and gives the background about what's in it, who's in it, who it's written by, the time that it's occurring in and taking place in, and the context of it all. So it's a really good and cool background. If you want to check it out, there's really one thing that stood out to me this week that I kind of wanted to go over that was in the lesson. And I think we all, at some point in our spiritual lives, have somebody that has mentored us, whether that's the person that originally shared the gospel with us and brought us to Christ, or if it was just somebody that we met, along the way after finding a church or after serving. But somewhere along the lines, I think we all have somebody that has mentored us in our sanctification process. And I can think of 2 or 3 men that have in the past or are currently, whether they know it or not, are kind of acting as mentors for me. And I think in First Thessalonians, that's what stuck out to me. So I want to look at chapter 1, verse 6. And this is Paul writing to the church in Thessalonica. And he's writing to them after he kind of got kicked out of Thessalonica. And Timothy came back from visiting them and gave Paul an update. And so Paul's kind of writing a letter to them. And he writes them and says, "And you became imitators of us and of the Lord, for you received the word in much affliction with the joy of the Holy Spirit, so that you became an example to all believers in Macedonia and in Achaia." That's not Ikea, the store. So basically, Paul's saying all of you in the Thessalonian church have become imitators of us, Paul and Timothy and Silas, and we kind of see that we saw this in Paul's letter to the Philippians as well, where he said, "Be imitators of me," not in a humble or a prideful way, but in a humble way, saying, "Imitate me because I am imitating Christ." And so what he's ultimately saying is, if you can't figure out the mark that Christ set for you to follow, I've figured it out and I'm following it, so follow me, as a living example that you can see. And so he's saying that here again to the Thessalonians, acknowledging that they imitated him and Timothy and Silas, and ultimately imitated the Lord. And I think that's something we should all strive to do in our Christian lives, and then in the sanctification process, is to find somebody within our church family or church group that we can imitate, who we know imitates Christ, because our ultimate goal is to imitate Christ himself. And so I've talked before in previous weeks about how our lives and our actions can serve as a testimony to non-believers and bring them to know the Lord. But here they're talking about how the way this church is acting, that it's inspiring other churches and other believers. And so I think that's the kind of the viewpoint I took on it this week was, yes, our actions can inspire non-believers, but we can also inspire our fellow believers that might be younger or earlier in their walk, or just inexperienced in a certain situation. And so Paul recognizes here that the church of Thessalonica is inspiring, men and women and believers of other cities and areas, and pretty much making disciples and spreading the gospel just by their actions and their behavior. And so my challenge for you guys this week is kind of a 2-part challenge. So, first part of the challenge is think about somebody in your life that was a Christian mentor to you. And when you've got somebody in mind, try to narrow down the traits that made them a Christ-like example for you to follow. So that's part one of the challenge. Part two of the challenge is to then take those qualities that you can recognize in them and see if you're portraying those to other believers. Because maybe somebody, even if you don't know it, is looking to you as their mentor as they walk in their spiritual life and going through things. Maybe they're looking to you in the way you act and handle things, and you just might not be aware of it. So think about where you're at in reflecting and imitating Christ. When people look at you as a Christian and within your church, are they seeing Christ or are they seeing the world? And so I just want to challenge you to examine what you portray to people and how you act and what others may see, and just strive to be an imitator of Christ. Hope that helps, and check out that video that I posted on Facebook that explains 1 Thessalonians. And if you don't have a new Explore the Bible book yet, they're at the church. Grab one. Even if you can't make it every week, grab one and just do it on your own. We got plenty of books, and I hope